I feel like if anything, like what you guys are saying is like it opens up a lot of creativity too.
It opens up a lot of things, and most of it's positive.
Pandora's box.
It's a lot of self-discovery, if anything. A lot of self-discovery.
So if I don't know who I am, I need to take mushrooms.
You'll find out pretty quickly. By hour 2.
This is the Garage Boozing Podcast.
What's up, nerds? And welcome back to another episode of the Garage Boozing Podcast. I'm your host, the man with absolutely no plan, the Chase with the face for radio, Chase Shurga. And boy, do I have one hell of an episode for you guys today. I am joined by the return of Brandon Eastman and the return of Mr. Conspiracy himself, Ben Wilcox. And boy, I've been wanting to have these two together for a long time on the podcast, and we finally made it happen. And honestly, this conversation went so long that we had to make it into 2 parts, of course, once again, because, you know, once we get boozing and talking, who knows, all bets are off. But yeah, I actually used to work in the same company as Brandon and Ben, so having them both together, we've known each other for many years, is just absolutely awesome. And these two creative minds together makes an awesome conversation, and I know you guys are going to love it. So without further ado, folks, you know what time it is. It's time to sit back, relax, kick your feet up, crack open a cold one, and if you're really feeling fruity, take a shot. Why not? Because this week's episode of the Garage Boozing Podcast starts now.
Oh, yeah, in support for the Garage Boozing Podcast, it is brought to you by Manscaped. Manscaped will help you trim up the family jewels to make everything nice and right for the ladies. Make sure that you're using promo code TGBP20 for 20% off your Manscaped products. Oh, yeah!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Garage Boozing Podcast. Today, I am joined by 2 very special guests. To my left, your right, if you're watching on YouTube, we have the return of Brandon Eastman. And to my right, your left, if you're watching on YouTube, we have the return of Ben Wilcox, also known as Mr. Conspiracy, as I like to call him. Guys, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me back, man.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Much appreciated.
Thanks for coming back. No, yours was fine. I was adjusting his because he's leaned back.
I can move it in.
No, you're good. You're a loud voice. Wait, did that make sense? You're loud. Your voice is loud.
Yes.
Those shots are catching up to me now. All right.
Oh, should we have taken the shot?
We got to take a shot. Why not?
Take a shot. Why not? We got to make a cheers, though. I won't spill the other half, I promise.
Yeah, he just spilled it all over my soundboard. I mean, you need a new full one. No, I don't have enough.
There's an abundance of soundboards, man.
All right, cheers.
Cheers.
To the podcast.
Well, that's rough.
That's what a dog says.
Orangey.
Jeez.
Edit that out.
What? Orgy?
No.
Which part?
His joke.
That's what a dog
Why?
says? Because it was a bad joke.
We'll lose half the viewers.
Oh, yeah. All right. Let me just pull on my list here. All right, so first thing I want to start with here is we were talking about this previously before we got started, and I wanted to save most of it here for the podcast, but we're just going to jump right into the topic of drugs. Brandon wanted to talk about drugs, and you both have some experience when it comes to drugs. I don't even know how to start this question. So
I think you just did.
No, all right, yeah.
Drugs.
Yeah, drugs. All right, what do you have to say about
I think
drugs?
we should specify what kind of drugs we're talking about. Because there's the drugs that we think about every day. Like, you know, we've got marijuana, we got heroin, coke. But then there's the spiritual side of things.
Do you think about marijuana, heroin, and coke every day?
Depending on who you are.
Okay, sure.
And then you've got the spiritual side of drugs, which is psychedelics. You've got mushrooms, you've got acid. I mean, Ben, you're more of a connoisseur than me, man.
I've taken acid, LSD. I've taken mushrooms. That's really the extent. No, actually, I took mescaline, which is very similar.
The fuck is that?
It's like peyote. It's a thing that grows in the desert, I believe. Mescaline, yeah. Or it's a
masculine.
It's like any other like mushrooms or peyote or that sort of thing, though. It's a naturally occurring, and it's pretty powerful.
But I mean, the thing is, these drugs can provide you an actual experience, unlike something like these harder drugs that you think about all the time. I mean, we think of drugs and we think of bad, right? You think of things that you shouldn't take. Sure. But there's the other side of things, such as mushrooms and acid, that can be taken in a party environment, but I wouldn't recommend that. You can take them and actually have a spiritual experience with these drugs.
Have you had such spiritual experience?
Well, dude, we weren't friends in high school. We became friends much later on, but in high school, I was the guy who was like against all types of drugs. When it comes to weed, I was like, nope, scumbags smoke weed, scumbags do drugs. And I had an experience where I was actually able to do mushrooms. And it was unlike any other experience that I could possibly explain to you.
How many mushrooms did you eat?
So we did it twice. So we did one trip.
And you tripped.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you take them and you trip. You're probably thinking of microdosing, which is where you take a very small amount.
Well, because we were going to get to that, because you were going to talk about that too. But
we did full trips. I mean, we did 1.5 grams of mushrooms in a very safe environment, right?
Is that a lot?
I'll explain.
Depends on who you ask.
I'll explain. So we did 1.5 grams because we didn't know how I would react, because the person I was with had already done them in the past. And they said, this is a great way to ease you into it. I was like, okay, cool. So we did 1.5 grams, and you felt it. Like, you definitely had some of the reality-altering experience.
See, that scares me.
What part of it? Why does it scare you?
Not being in control.
You're in control. You're in control to an extent.
There's a lot of misconceptions about hallucinogens, and a lot of people will sort of pigeonhole everything into what you hear about, like PCP and like really hardcore. With those types of drugs, you actually have full-on hallucinations where you think people are in the room with you, or you imagine a scenario that's not actually happening. Where with mushrooms especially, and with acid, it's more of sort of distortion of things. Walls look like they're sort of bowed. The floor looks like it's like if you have carpet, things look like they're moving, but you wouldn't actually see. What if you hear somebody telling a story like, "Oh, I took acid and an elephant came in the room and we all that's not true." Yeah, they're making it up. And so it's not. You're not. There's no loss. I mean, if you took a lot, yes, then you would probably lose touch with the reality for a minute. But it's not. There's no. First of all, with LSD, there's no lethal dose. You could chug a gallon of it and you'd be pretty messed up for a long time, but you wouldn't die.
So you can't overdose on LSD?
No.
You can overdose, but you can't die.
Yes.
What?
There's no lethal.
There's no lethal amount.
No.
Oh, you can overdose on something and not die?
That being said, well, yeah, I mean, you can have a bad trip, and that would be considered. Or if you were to take too much and lost control of your, you didn't know where you were, and because that can happen. I've done that. I did it purposely, though. I wanted to see how spun out I could get, and that's this is going back many years ago when I was really,
Bingo.
Before I had my children, before I got married, and you have a sense of, I'm sure you guys can relate of nothing will kill me, and I'm going to try and prove that. And so, I mean, my experience with LSD, I had a very close friend who was touring with Travel with Fish.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and she would come home pretty regularly, and she would have some, and so I knew her, and I knew where it was coming from, and so it was safe as illicit drugs can be. But it's definitely an experience that I would recommend to anybody who has the mental fortitude for one, because if you're in a bad place mentally, it's certainly not a good idea. But it opens up things that, and I know this sounds cliche, but it opens up doors. It opens up things in your mind that you weren't even aware of. Anyone who's tried it for the first time and you ask them, a lot of people give the same response, the same type of experience, that it felt spiritual. It felt like you were in tune with something bigger, something larger, or that you're aware of something more than just yourself. I don't know if you got that, but like...
So much.
Yeah. And not so much like some people experience that are very religious to begin with will think that they, felt the touch of God or Jesus or whatever, but whatever it is, whatever that, if you believe that something created us, whatever you want to call it, I think that we're sort of cut off to that in our normal everyday. And maybe for a reason, maybe to keep us, on this earth doing what we're doing throughout our daily, rather than getting distracted. But those types of drugs all of a sudden open up that door wide, and all of a sudden you're looking out at.
I kind of relate to that in a way, but not like I don't really know how to explain this. So where I'm going with that is, I take Adderall every day, right? I'm prescribed Adderall.
Pharmaceutical meth?
Yeah, pretty much. Yes, that's what they call it, yes. But kind of what you were just saying is it makes you feel like powerful is kind of what you're saying, right? Like, yeah. So like,
Well,
so what I'm saying is like, I gotta stop saying like. So,
You'll get
so-
better now that you've noticed it.
I just noticed it. I'm saying like so much. Okay. Anyway, so I take Adderall every day, but I wasn't diagnosed with ADD until I was in my younger 20s. So like my mom always used to tell me as a kid, well, tell my dad, I guess, that she thought I had ADD, ADHD, whatever, and I should see the doctor about it. My dad's like, "Psh, whatever." So
like most dads.
yeah, right.
Me
He's
included,
he's
I
fine.
know.
He doesn't need it. What do you mean? Which I mean, I probably wouldn't want my kid taking Adderall anyway. But like people who don't have ADD will take an Adderall and they'll be like, "Woo, let's go clean the whole house. Yeah, let's party." It's not like that for me at all.
Right.
It just like one, it makes me focused, way more focused. Because before that, dude, like I don't know, my brain just works like ball, squirrel, shiny ball, like all over the place, right? But like when my Adderall kicks in, dude, I can focus, I can work. Like I've always said, like if I had this when I was in school, and it's a drug, so I guess it falls under the category of what we're talking about. If I had it in school, I would have been a straight A student all day, but I could never focus. And when I don't have my Adderall, I'm just like a slouch kind of. Like I'm not really motivated to do anything. I'm just like my brain can't focus on one thing. I'm like I don't know. It's so weird. I don't know how to explain it, but like totally changed my life for the better for sure. I'm way more focused on than I've ever been in anything.
I think there's a big difference between something being categorized as a drug and something being categorized as a medicine. Because Adderall, you can think of it as a tool, or you can think of it as a drug to change your experience of life, right? So you think of it as a tool to help you. Some people think of marijuana as a tool to help them. Some people think of it as a drug. Some people think of mushrooms as a party drug. But some people think of it as, like what you were saying, a doorway to seeing things in a different way. Like, you can't really explain to people who haven't done mushrooms what it's like, because what it's actually like is something that you really can't even describe with the language that we use to communicate with each other. Like the first time I used it, we did 1.5 grams, and we definitely felt it. Like the music was very pleasurable to listen to.
Pleasurable.
It was. And we were outside. Like this person lives in a big wooded area, and it was the trees, just you appreciated nature in a much.
Does this person live down the road from me?
They don't live near you.
Oh,
It depends on what you think near is.
So
they're
not-
within an hour of you.
Oh, do I
Yeah,
know?
they're
do I
within
know
an
the
hour
per-
of
Do
you.
I know the person?
I don't think you know this person. No.
Oh, I thought it was our good friend down the road.
No, it's not that. No, it's not that friend.
Okay, keep going. Sorry.
So we did 1.5 grams, and it was a decent experience. And he kept saying, you need to respect the plant. You don't know when it's actually going to kick in. And I said, okay, cool. It never really fully kicked in, right? 1.5 grams is 1.5 grams. So a month later, we did it again. And I remember I was in the car with this person. You know who we're talking about.
Of course.
And I was in the car with them, and they turned around, and I'm like, so how much are we doing this time? And he's like, so dude, you know my favorite number, man, which is 9. He's like, my dealer gave me 9 grams of this stuff, and we get to split it for ourselves. So each of us did 4.5
Holy
grams
shit, dude.
of mushrooms.
That's a
And
lot.
It's called a heroic dose, right? You could do more, but this is like the amount that gives you the full experience. And let me tell you, dude, it felt like we were doing a completely different drug than the 1.5 grams. Everything was different. It changed my life, Chase. It changed my life, which is what led to the microdosing and what we've talked about. But like, I'm more than happy to go into it with you. But
Go ahead.
okay. So all I'll say is this: it was a scary experience, but it was also an experience where it felt like I'm not even a religious person. Like I'm not Catholic, anything like that. It felt like you met God, and that you and God and the earth and other people were one. Like I truly believe me, you, Ben, we're all one person. Like we are all from the same. We're all from the soil. We're all from the earth. I know this sounds very strange. Listen, I completely get it. Because before you do this, I would have thought the same thing.
Draft Top. The Draft Top was designed to give you a better all-around drinking experience, and let me tell you how. You take your Draft Top bar tool, put it on top of your adult beverage, give it a little squeeze, not too hard, a little bit of friction, a little to the left, a little to the right, a little to the left, a little to the right, and wha-bam. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see me demonstrate this. If you're listening, I'm sorry, you just got to hear me talk. But yeah, then you pop your Draft Top off, take this, push it down just a tad, and now your beer just became a cup. So forget about wasting plastic, pouring your beer can into a cup, into a red Solo cup, if you will. It doesn't matter because now your Draft Top just made your beer into a cup. So now you can chug your beer a hell of a lot faster. You can smell the aroma of the alcohol. The experience of drinking here is just so much better thanks to Draft Top. So go get yours now. I want you to have one, you want you to have one, and you can get your own Draft Top at www.drafttop.com. And don't forget to use promo code GarageBoozing for 10% off site-wide. That's right. It doesn't matter what you get in your Draft Top cart, 10% off site-wide using promo code GarageBoozing. You know how to spell it. Don't be a fool. Buy your Draft Top right now. Treat yourself. You deserve it. All right, back to the show.
And what you experienced, dude, I took two main takeaways, just so we don't spend the whole time talking about this. Two main takeaways from this experience. Number one, you leave your body, this physical vessel that carries us. You leave the body. And you realize we're all one. Why do we fight each other? Why is there war? Why do we hurt each other? I learned two main things. The first thing is nothing is urgent in this life. Absolutely nothing is urgent. Everything is happening the way it was meant to happen. And the second thing I learned, which is actually kind of hard to remember at this point, but I learned many things. But what I learned is nothing is urgent. And really, dude, if you think about what we really are as people, we are love. And this is why the whole hippie generation was born.
I was just going to ask, are you a hippie now?
So it sounds like a bunch of hippie mumbo jumbo, but
It does.
But do you know why? Because hippies take mushrooms.
It's the truth, brother.
That's
you
why-
realize
that-
this
yeah,
once you
yeah.
Peace and love.
Yeah. Yeah.
the strongest vibration is love, man.
So
Strongest
let me give
vibration.
you just and I'll try to condense it as much as I can, but an experience that I had that was on the same lines as what you're describing. When I was in college, I went to school in Plattsburgh, and 5 or 6 of my friends and I all took, some of us took acid, and 2 of us took mushrooms. It was really interesting. We had a very similar experience, all of us, even though the acid came from somebody else, the mushrooms came from a different place. The experience was the same for all of us. And all night, we were trying to quantify what it is that life is. What we're trying to like boil it down to a very simple description of what, we're all feeling the same thing, that we were part of this thing, this bigger, almost like a grid. And we ended up calling it the pattern. And we were talking about how we felt like we were moving in and out of it, and everything was based on it, that it was like what you would expect. And this is before The Matrix came out, and very similar concept.
I watched that movie because of you.
I know. And so
I love that
you
movie.
can relate to this analogy. And this is before that movie came out, and we felt like we were in that, and we were questioning it. Like, is this real? Is this real, or is it only because we perceive it to be real? Because it feels like we're in some sort of a simulation, and we were really all saying that. And so while we were having this discussion, my friend TJ was smoking a cigarette, and the smoke from the cigarette was curling through what we were all seeing as this grid, this thing that was moving, and we were all seeing it. And we didn't. Not one of us pointed out and said, "Do you see that?" We're all just staring at the same thing.
And that didn't freak you out?
Yeah, I mean, it freaks you out at the same time, though. You all feel connected, a whole lot of serotonin going on, so you're feeling good, and everybody's like, yeah. And there was just this energy amongst the 5 or 6 of us, whatever it was. And we're all night, we're all just adding in our pieces of mind, our thoughts on what was happening. And every time we would come close to it, we would all kind of join together in this energy that we all felt. It was very real.
That's it.
And here's the coolest part, and there's a lot of things that happened that night I'll skip, but one of the interesting things about that night was later on in the night, acid lasts much longer. You'll trip on acid for sometimes 12 to 14 hours.
Holy shit.
Whereas mushrooms, typically 6 to 8 maybe, and then you're done. So we'd been tripping all day. It was
a
into
long
the night.
time.
It is, and it's an experience. And when you're taking acid, you really have to set aside some time because you need a recovery the next day and all that. So we're still having this conversation. We're sitting in my friend's dorm room. It's late at night. The other 2 guys that took mushrooms are starting to fall asleep. And we're all, the rest of us that are on acid are still like, we're talking about this. And the 2 of them are nodding off. And we were still doing this thing where we would all be like, yeah, we would come to this like moment where we all were agreeing and all in unison. And the 2 guys that were asleep would sit up and be like, yeah. And then
They were there the whole time, dude.
they were out cold though. Like one of them was snoring, but every time we had that moment where we all felt like we were all on that same page or channel,
It was like, yeah, dude.
they all, both of them sat right up, eyes wide open, be like, yeah, man, totally, yeah. And then right back out.
Let me tell you, dude, similar to the cigarette smoke, this individual's girlfriend was like, she's like a sage, bro. Like, she's like Wiccan. Like, she's a very spiritual individual.
She's a witch.
She quite, yeah, real.
She's a witch.
Yeah, 100%. So she literally brought back like this fern, this leaf, but it was like a big leaf, so I guess you'd call it a fern. And she's like, "Hey, I want you to hold this." And she handed it to me while we're both tripping. And as I was holding this leaf, dude, have you ever held a newborn baby?
No.
You never held a newborn? Okay, so anyways, it's like this.
like fresh out of the vagina.
Fresh out of the vagina.
Brandon just takes out of the hospital and catches them.
Every weekend, it's a weekend thing for me. So.
Covered in juices and shit. No, I can't say I have.
So I was holding this leaf, dude, and you could literally feel the leaf. It's going to sound crazy for those who haven't done psychedelics, but you could literally feel the leaf breathing. It was moving in my hands. It was moving and breathing, and I was like, holy shit, like this is fucking crazy. And I handed it back to her, but it was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life.
It's like the magic conch shell.
It's exactly the same as the magic conch shell. I agree.
Can I have a bite?
It's onto something, bro.
Can I have a bite of the delicious sandwich? No.
Do you say anything else but no? You'll have to ask again. No.
Dude, SpongeBob references will never get old. But I love how you said it's one of the most beautiful experiences you ever had was having this leaf breathing in your hand.
And yeah, go ahead.
I think that the connection there, though, is that it was a living thing and that we all share the same, whatever that energy is that makes us alive. Plants have it, we have it. We tend to, as humans, think that we are superior to all these other, but every living creature that has life in it, that's something that we still can't pinpoint what that is. Think about this. This is kind of an interesting concept, but we think that we're really advanced in what we know and what we believe about the world and where we came from and evolution. And I believe that the theory of evolution is fairly correct, but I think it was helped. I think there was a higher power that put it in motion. I don't think Adam and Eve and any of that stuff. But we, as advanced as we are, we can't create life. We have never made a plant, not even a plant. I'm not talking about like a human or an animal. Like we've never even made a plant that started from completely, not taking DNA from something else or taking a living creature and then cloning it or whatever. We've never been able to spawn life. We can't, really put our finger on what that is still to this day.
I see what you mean. And make it from scratch.
Yes, exactly. You can clone something. You can take the cells of something and make another one out of it. But to actually create spontaneous life is way beyond us. And, and yet we pretend that we are as advanced as we think we are, and those things are still out of our grasp.
I feel like I just learned a lot about drugs in a short period of time.
The one thing I just want to come in here and say is people are going to hear this and they're going to be like, oh, dude, I do mushrooms at every party, man. This is something that you need to do. If you want to do it in a spiritual way, you need to put time aside, like what you said, Ben. You need to do it with maybe even one other person, but you need to have someone called a trip sitter, someone who's there to literally watch you do it. And you need to do it in a very safe way. Like, if you're really serious about doing this and you're someone who's like, I've always wanted to do this, but I'm not sure how, there's a book called The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide.
Just to be clear, Brandon is not recommending that you do drugs.
Yes. There's a book called The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide by James Fadiman that goes over everything that we're talking about right now, but he explains how you can do it in a safe setting. But of course, I would never recommend you do something like that. Only scumbags do drugs.
Don't do drugs. Okay.
No, that is all very interesting. To me, it's just like, I don't know. I was always thinking taking acid and mushrooms and to just woo, party, stuff like that. But both of what you just said is just like.
When I first took acid, the first time I bought it, I was pretty young. I was a teenager, still in high school, and I was hanging out with some kids that were whatever. So there was a lot of that stuff going around. And I bought it because my friend was buying it, and I wanted to be cool, and I didn't want to be like, I'm not taking that. I didn't really want it, and I was scared of it, and I had. Kind of like what I'm getting from you, I had no idea what to expect from it. I
still would have no idea.
And everything that I'd ever heard or what I thought I knew was completely wrong, for one, and scary. And so I thought that I would just be hallucinating in the desert somewhere with a coyote. I didn't know what to expect. So when I did end up doing it for the first time, my experience for the first time was amazing. I did it at a party where everybody there was tripping. Like the guy who threw the party gave everybody acid, and so it was. And I'm obviously older than you guys. This was during the '90s when the hippie thing came back into fashion.
Obviously,
yes, quite a bit. So this was, everybody. It was like it could have been a scene taken out of the '60s. I mean, if you walked into this room and you didn't know what year it was, you would have thought you wouldn't know.
Dazed and Confused. Oh, that was the '90s, right?
was the 70s. It could have been the 90s though. It was very similar. But it was and everybody there was like very, and what you're describing, like if you were to even have a bad time, somebody there was going to be like, I got you. Like, it was that kind of crowd. And so it was just the sense of just very safe, very comfortable, and a whole house full of people just, and like, it was really interesting. Like there were a couple of people there that were artists. And this one guy just doodled all night, and he drew this thing that started off with this little sketch in the middle of the paper that built out into this. And we were looking at it that night when we were tripping, and it just looked like it was moving and everything. And the next day, looking at it, it still was amazing. Like it was incredible, yeah. Because he spent so much time, little detail, just hours of drawing this.
So you think like him tripping is what helped him like?
He was already an artist to begin with, but I think that came out certainly came out of from whatever was going on in his brain.
Got his brain moving, like.
But the cool thing for him was he was experiencing whatever acid was showing him, and he was able to actually write it down, which is he was able to draw it out. So what he was seeing in his head and because when you close your eyes, you see a lot of shit, and like I think that's what he was drawing off. But yeah, it was just that was a cool. A way for me to my first experience with it. But I think that for some people that might take it at a party or whatever, that they're by themselves or with one other person, that might be scary because you're thinking that everybody, like, it's one of those things that will make you paranoid. Like everybody knows that I'm taking acid somehow.
Yeah,
and that would be a bad experience, I think. So it is definitely really key to the way you experience it.
I feel like if anything, like what you guys are saying is like it opens up a lot of creativity too.
It opens up a lot of things, and most of it's positive.
Pandora's box.
It's a lot of self-discovery, if anything. A lot of self-discovery.
So if I don't know who I am, I need to take mushrooms.
You'll find out pretty quickly. By hour 2.
So like we're talking about tripping our balls off right now, but like, so before you mentioned a thing called microdosing, which we've talked kind of about, and I know you've made a couple YouTube videos about this. Explain this is mushrooms, not acid.
Exactly. You can do it with either.
Have you done acid?
No, I've never done acid.
Okay, so how is acid made?
Acid is a chemical, like a man-made version of psilocybin. It's very similar. It's derived.
I knew he would know. That's why I looked at him.
Yeah,
He knows everything.
It derives from the mold that grows on rye, actually, and then there's a chemical distillation of that breaks it down in LSD.
Who fucking collects?
I've
this
actually got
mold?
some rye with me right now.
Yeah, right. Who collects this mold off this rye and like?
That's the $1 million question on how people discovered a lot of things, but it was, and then there's back in the '60s, I think it was the '60s. Yeah, in the '60s, what's his name? The acid guru. There was a scientist who, and I'm just blanking on his name.
Nelson Mandela.
Fairly certain it was not Nelson Mandela, but Timothy Leary. So he initially started studying it and started taking it, and went from an astute scientist who was doing an actual study on this to full-blown acid user, and was documenting everything, but went from his daily job to driving a bus across California and just giving out acid to everybody because he felt like everyone needed to experience this. Like it changes you, and when you, like you were saying, like you can't not be a different person afterwards, and not necessarily like it's not going to make you a better person per se, but it will change your perspective on things because you'll see things that I think that you aren't supposed to see. And I think that's really what it is.
So you obviously got to be very safe when you're doing these drugs because, these are obviously illegal drugs. Like they're not legal; they're illegal for a reason because a lot of people ruin their lives when they get hooked on these drugs. So
when Leary was driving around with the bus, though, it wasn't. No one knew what it was, so it was totally illegal, and he was handing it out to going to beach parties and just giving it to everyone. Yeah, but now certainly
people aren't getting hooked on psilocybin and acid.
No.
People are getting hooked on these other drugs that you hear about all the time. It's not the kind of drug that you do over and over. You get addicted and it ruins your life. It's something you do for an experience, for a purpose.
And typically, when you're coming, especially acid, but mushrooms as well, when it's done, you're done with it.
So it's not something like you don't think that people are like, oh, I got to take more mushrooms.
No,
not at all.
You're not chasing that high.
So it's not like a hard drug.
No. This is a spiritual drug.
Psychedelic, as you said.
Yes.
Okay, so back to the microdosing thing. So you've made a couple of videos. You're a microdosing advocate, would you say, or like
100%? And a microdose is when you take 1/10 of anything. It's a very small dose of any substance. So marijuana, Advil, you can microdose. You can microdose everything. And when you microdose, you get the sub-perceptual effects of the drug. So you get all the things that's happening in the background when you would normally take mushrooms.
So you're saying you take a little bit of mushrooms.
A very, very small amount. You can even get like again, I'm not advocating for going to a specific place to get them, but there are specific places that you can get them where they literally sell microdosing kits where you take one truffle. Like, for example, I did a 60-day, I call it a challenge, but I did microdosing for 60 days.
For 60 days?
60 days.
You took mushrooms every day for 60 days?
Not every day. You take one dose, and then you take one dose the first day, 1/10 of the drug. You experience and enjoy the effects. The second day, you still have some of the effects. So you're not tripping. It's very important to understand you're not tripping when you microdose. You're simply enjoying some of the things that are happening behind the scenes.
So are you a functioning member of society while this is happening?
People would never know. You're not high. You don't feel it.
So what do you feel? What do you feel?
It's not that you feel something. You notice things that you wouldn't have noticed if you didn't microdose. As an example, you might notice something that's beautiful to you. You might see like a flower. You might see a sunset. It sounds cheesy, but you might see something and say, wow, that's beautiful. I didn't notice that before. And you feel full of life. You feel energetic. You feel happy. And then the second day, you still experience some of those effects. And the third day, you still don't take one. You simply let it, you notice the difference of how you feel the third day without the drug than how you felt the first 2 days. And then you do it again. So every 3 days you take a microdose. And it changes your neurochemistry. Even you, I said, Ben,
What's
after
that?
this, it changes the way that you function on a regular basis. So you're essentially changing the programming in your brain the same way that you would change the programming on like a soundboard such as this.
This is very interesting.
It's something that's very, very under-researched, if researched at all, because it's illegal. And people aren't doing it, and they can't talk about it because the big question is, why are these drugs illegal?
I was going to ask that. You took my next question right off my list. Why are these drugs illegal?
So, if we're going to start into conspiracy theories,
Oh, here we go.
I know you're surprised, but yeah, I mean, it gets you to think. It gets you to open up your mind, and I think that there's stuff out there that we're not supposed to know. I know that sounds
Real
I don't
quick, so I'm going to guess what you're going to say. So if we all microdosed or took some mushrooms, we would all realize, like if everyone in the world at one time took them, we'd all realize that we're in the Matrix.
It'd be a different world.
And we need to bust out of our pods.
Maybe.
And fucking get back to real life and take it over.
I mean, that's a really, that would be a really rough analogy, but yeah. I think that would awaken people to maybe not come to that exact conclusion, but that there is something more.
So the government doesn't want us to take these mushrooms and have these experiences and these realizations.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think also it's just a control thing. I think that, there's really no reason that, marijuana was ever illegal. There actually is a reason.
Pineapple Express in the beginning. The guy smokes and he's like, illegal!
Did we talk about this in the last podcast?
One of them.
DuPont.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I forget
that's
what
actually why. Did you know that?
No.
So DuPont made nylon rope, and up until that nylon rope was available, it was hemp rope. Yeah, and DuPont wanted it out of the equation so that they could take over the rope game.
They used to make a lot of stuff out of hemp, like paper and stuff back in the days. Yeah,
because it's very, very durable.
I've seen a rumor that George Washington smoked weed, but I don't know how.
Oh, dude, he was doing a lot of drugs.
You think so? My fellow Americans.
But yeah, I think that mostly that it's a control thing. I think that if we are told that we can't do things, plus it also garners profits when you have illegal drugs, and not necessarily mushrooms and acid, but certainly cocaine. I think that's one of those things that is that's a whole nother podcast.
So let's talk about cocaine.
Yeah, right. All right, folks, let me tell you all about the pump action shotgun tool. Whoa, there's a tool for shotgunning? Hell yeah, there is. So listen to this. The pump action shotgun tool, created by the Drunk Engineers. Love that name, by the way. It makes shotgunning a hell of a lot easier, and let me tell you how. So you're going to take your beer, and you're going to stick it right in the shotgun tool, like this. Hold it like that so the air pockets are up here, and then you're going to give it a little squeeze. You're going to hear pop, bam, pop. But look at that. No mess. So right now the air pocket's right up here, and you're going to want to make sure you take this, push that down, and then what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the tool. Hold the beer can in place to the mouthpiece. Then you're going to put your mouth on the mouthpiece and shotgun. And boom, no mess. You can shotgun at the dinner table, family events, wherever you want with absolutely no mess. So forget shotgunning, slamming a knife right through. Yeah, not a thing anymore. Thanks to the Pump Action Shotgun Tool by Drunk Engineers. And you can get yours right now. So just log on to www.drunkengr.com drunkengineers.ca. Don't forget to use promo code GarageBoozing for 15% off site-wide. That's right, promo code GarageBoozing for 15% off site-wide. Go get yours now. Thank me later. Back to the show. So back to the microdosing thing real quick. Brandon had to pee really fast. I'm not exactly sure where we left off, but did you explain the whole thing? Or
Yeah.
so you just take it and it's just like...
So the thing is,
Oh, your
after
60-day challenge. So what were your results of your 60-day challenge? Let's just say that.
the result, and it's hard, man, because I'm someone who's naturally energetic. I feel good throughout.
And you
the day.
haven't always been that way.
Absolutely not. And we talked about that in the last
Yeah.
podcast, so feel free to go check that out. But I'm normally an energetic guy, but what I did notice is the day that I would do the microdose, I would feel very positive, very optimistic. You know, they say, like, don't do a full dose if, like, you're going through some shit, like what we talked about earlier. You know, make sure that you're in a great mental state of mind. Microdosing, though, if you are someone who's, like, you know, you want to improve your life, there's many ways to do it. Microdosing could help, right? So it's very important to understand where you're getting it from, the source you're getting it from. But it could help. It gives you the sub-perceptual benefits of what mushrooms would normally do for you, or acid if you're microdosing that.
I think it would be especially beneficial for someone who has never taken mushrooms before, so that they would, you know, I haven't done it in years, so it probably would affect me, but like someone who does it all the time might not get the same experience because they're expecting, you know, when you're taking a full load of it, it's a whole, like you had said, like just taking 1.5 grams versus 4.5 grams is a completely different experience. And I know that it's been used. There's been like psilocybin mushroom therapy for people who are alcoholics or people who have severe depression, and it can switch that gear in your mind where all of a sudden you just change lanes. And I think that is what microdosing is intended for. And I think that somebody who, like myself, that's done a bunch of them, might not get the same experience. But you did it before you had, or did you do it after you took mushrooms? Like
You tripped
Yes,
first.
I was very intrigued by the mushroom experience, and I said I want to take this to the next level without doing another heroic trip. Although I'm very much interested in that. I plan to do one every change of the seasons, once a quarter, to do a heroic trip to get that experience. I mean, dude, life is only so long. Right, you don't know when the end's going to be, so why not experience these beautiful journees?
I do always say
while you have the opportunity.
I always say I'm here for a good time, not a long time. It's a very cliche thing that people say, especially when they're like, yeah, let's drink, let's get hammered. But I don't mean it like that. I literally mean like, I don't know. I could get in a car accident tomorrow and die.
Yes.
So I want to live my life to the fullest because I don't know when my expiration date is.
You could die right now.
Yeah, seriously.
Like right now.
Yeah, you guys could team up on me and stab me, beat the shit out of me.
We'll save that for after. We'd like this to be published first.
And then beat up my dad.
I would never touch Ray. He's a great man.
He is a great man.
Great dancer.
Great dancer. And good karaoke guy, too.
Oh, my God.
the best.
What about when I did karaoke at your wedding? I killed it. Didn't
It
I?
was incredible. You were literally a mini Ray Sugar.
I know, because my dad always does karaoke. He always does a "Get Down Tonight" by Casey and the Sunshine Band, and every time he does karaoke, he acts like it's his first time. He's like, "What are the words again?" And so, real quick to make this story, which is way out of left field here, but so Brandon got married in Mexico, and I had the benefit of joining the wedding and being down there.
Chase didn't just join the wedding. Chase was my best man. Chase has made a profound impact on my life.
I have a flask that says that. Anyway, so yeah, so I had not the benefit. Sure, I had the I suck at words.
You had the opportunity.
The opportunity to go to Mexico for my friend's wedding here, and there was a bunch of us. Where am I going? Oh yeah. So anyway, so the day that the actual like ceremony came, oh yeah, there was a shot at what do they call it? The reception, right? Is that
Yeah.
Yeah, the reception. So where you walk in, you have like this, where you have dinner and everything. I'm not married, so I don't know what the fuck you call it. Anyway, long story short, the table that I was seated at, every person had a shot at tequila, right? And there was a pregnant girl at my table, and then there was like people that just didn't want the
I
shots.
gave you my shot.
Yeah, so like I had like 5 shots of tequila, right? Blacked out. I blacked out after his wedding. It was so bad. I dropped Kingston in the sand. Your mom was so pissed. I remember that. Kingston is his nephew. Anyway, so yeah, 5 shots later, I'm like, I'm gonna sing some karaoke. Don't even remember singing
Dude, you
karaoke.
crushed it.
I just remember having the words on my phone, and I like went up to the DJ and asked him if they could play a song or whatever. And yeah, I sang karaoke, and it was fucking awesome.
He was a mini Ray Sugar. And Ray Sugar, you're a fucking legend.
Yeah, fucking
Seriously.
legend.
That's the truth.
Don't you worry, folks. We're only getting started. Part 2 of this fantastic conversation with Brandon Eastman and Ben Wilcox comes to you next week.
Hey, nerds. please don't forget the #1 way to support the brand. Buy some merch. We've got hats, hoodies, sweatshirts, t-shirts, and it's all available to you at www.garageboozing.net/shop. And don't forget to follow on all your favorite social media accounts as well as YouTube at Garage Boozing. And of course, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, whatever the button may be, to the Garage Boozing Podcast on your favorite podcast platforms so you can be notified as soon as a new episode is released.
Ladies, gentlemen, and nerds. Do you have what it takes to be a guest on the fastest growing, alcohol chugging, and nonsense talking podcast? Well, now is your chance. The Garage Boozing Podcast has new guests every week, and you could be one of them. Just simply log on to www.garageboozing.net, click the Be on the Show tab, and submit your information. It's that simple. Join the boozement, or be a loser. Don't miss your chance, because we're taking this to the moon.